Hello again to another Agakala React, and today we will be watching another part of the Ottoman History and Battles playlist. And this one is very long, so I'm gonna put it in two parts. It's more than 15 minutes long, and it's full of Constantinople, 1453 from Kings and Generals. I'm gonna split it into two parts of like 25 minutes long or something like that, and but record them together. So let's just jump into it because it's long and I still have other things to record as well. And if you notice that I'm dressed differently than yesterday, it's mostly because I have a bit of a technical difficulties with my computer. So hopefully I won't have any problems today, but I might be looking onto the side often to just check if everything is working. So sorry for that. So let's just jump into it, and I'm gonna put the timer on as well for the 25 minutes, so yeah.
It was an early and deafening spring morning in Constantinople during the year 1453. The thunderous and violent sounds of roaring cannons and clashing swords filled the sky of the Roman capital as the Ottomans began their relentless assault on the ancient city. On top of the grand Theodosian walls overlooking the battle below was the horrified Constantine XI of the much reduced Eastern Roman Empire. The emperor knew that a Turkish victory today would bring about the end of his over 2,000-year-old state. Only time would tell if the walls of Constantinople could hold out against the tidal wave of humanity pushing up on its fortifications. Welcome to our season finale on the early history of the Ottoman Empire, in which we will discuss the famous Siege of Constantinople and the explosive end of the Byzantine Empire. This video is sponsored by our YouTube members and patrons, who get 2 exclusive videos weekly, not available anywhere else, for their kind support of our channel. You can join their ranks to watch more than 160 videos, including our series on the Pacific War, Punic Wars, Persian Wars, Spanish War of Succession, Russo-Japanese War, North African Campaign of World War II, History of Prussia, Italian Unification Wars, Risorgimento, Albigensian Crusades, and much more. Click the link in the description or pinned comment to get the exclusive videos, early access to all public videos, our schedule, wallpapers, access to a special Discord server where we're very active, and much more. Thanks for supporting us. We couldn't be doing it without your help.
This AI transforms a kid's photo into a personalized story.
That was a quick one. I just have lots of problems with things. So basically, don't have much to say for now, because we just started, and yeah, I need to invest in a new keyboard as well, or just get rid of this old battery. Yeah, so basically I'm gonna be back in a second. I'm gonna try to fix it while the ad is going, so yeah, see you in a moment. Bye. Alright, I'm back. The keyboard is still not working, so I just have to use the mouse, and let's just go back and keep watching.
Over the centuries, the desire of Islamic State to capture the Roman imperial seat of Constantinople was a fascination as old as the Islamic faith itself. Presumably, back in the early years of Islam, the Prophet Muhammad wrote a letter to Emperor Heraclius after a military triumph over the Sassanids. In the letter, Muhammad invited the emperor to convert to the Islamic faith and surrender himself to Allah, or else he would face his master's judgment. In response, Heraclius is reported to have taken the mysterious letter seriously and even made some inquiries about the new faith and its alleged prophet. Although the religiously devoted Roman ruler decided to retain the Christian faith of his ancestors, he did acknowledge Muhammad's claims to prophethood and preserved his letter. A similar letter by the prophet was also sent to the Shahenshah of Persia, Khosrow II, but this time around the letter was torn to shreds and discarded. The responses of the two monarchs to Muhammad's letters would mirror the fate of their respective realms. Whether these scenes from Islamic traditional accounts really transpired or not, by the 630s, Arab armies, motivated by holy war, had started to appear on the frontiers of the Roman and Persian empires, and began raiding into Palestine and Mesopotamia. Their goal was to spread the word of God not by letters, but by the sword. By the middle of the century, these newly assembled armies of the newly formed Islamic Rashidun Caliphate had vanquished the numerous armies of both Constantinople and Ctesiphon in various battles around the Middle East. While the Sassanid Persian realm was swallowed whole by the armies of Islam, the declining Roman state was left to withstand the Arab advance alone, albeit at the cost of its Egyptian, Syrian, and North African territories. Nonetheless, within a century after their initial push out of the Arabian Peninsula, the followers of the Prophet Muhammad found themselves unable to continue the jihad of their forefathers as they were halted at the stone gates of the Taurus Mountains. Although their territories were reduced by 2/3, the Eastern Romans had proved to be a more defiant and resilient foe than their Persian neighbours, having survived 2 significant Arab sieges of Constantinople in 674 and 717, in addition to surviving numerous Arab raids into their core region of Anatolia, lasting well into the 9th century. These military setbacks, in particular the 2 failed sieges on the Eastern Roman capital, remained a significant psychological scar for the various Islamic caliphates of the Middle Ages for many centuries. Compounded by the fact that many were lost in the 2 sieges, including the Prophet's own standard-bearer Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, the age of jihad and potential world conquest of Islam had also come to a screeching halt. By the 10th century, the opportunity to seize the Roman imperial seat had long passed, as the later Abbasid Caliphate politically fractured after years of decentralization. The same period saw the Byzantines resurging in military and economic power under the Macedonian dynasty, which saw its imperial members go on the offensive in northern Syria and eastern Anatolia. Nevertheless, the magnificent dream of one day capturing the Queen of Cities never faded in the minds of various Muslim communities throughout the centuries, including the sons of Osman. On the night of March 30th, 1432, Humayatun, one of Murad II's many wives, gave birth to a baby boy in the Royal Ottoman Palace at Adana. Even though this birth saw the Ottoman capital celebrate in euphoria, no one, not even Murad himself, thought the young boy would ever become a ruler in his own right, for he was the youngest of 3 sons, and not likely to become his father's heir. Regardless of his chances of one day ruling, the Sultan decided to name the baby boy after his late father, Mehmed. In the coming years, the Ottoman prince was given an extensive education by the leading scholars of the realm, which was a part of his father's initiative in promoting the arts at his royal court. After some time, it was discovered that Mehmed had a significant thirst for learning, as he would go on at an early age to learn multiple languages, such as Arabic, Persian, Latin, Italian, Greek, Hebrew, and most likely Serbian. The young boy also showed a keen interest in reading Homer's and Herodotus's antique classics, in addition to studying the famous military exploits of ancient figures, such as Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar. However, perhaps most influential to Mehmed during his student years was his Islamic education under Turkish scholar Akşem Seddin, where one line from the Hadith fascinated and inspired him to no end. "Verily, you shall conquer Constantinople. What a wonderful leader will he be, and what a wonderful army will that army be." By the time Mehmed was 6 years old, he was given the governorship of Amasya, where he continued his education and got first-hand experience of ruling. However, within 2 years of his arrival, his life was to change forever. The 1440s were chaotic, not only for the Ottoman state, as Crusader armies of Western Europe invaded the Sultanate numerous times, but also for the young prince. In only a few years, his 2 elder half-brothers had unexpectedly died. His mother had been sent away into exile from the imperial harem, and his father had stepped down from the royal...
Due to scarce Ottoman records on the imperial harem, reasons for Huma's exile are unknown. Even her name was unclear until found in her court records. Her tomb inscription simply refers to her as the lady who mothered Mehmed. Okay.
Throne into political retirement. Being Murad II's sole surviving son, Mehmed ascended to the throne in 1444, causing much political discontent at the imperial court. Foregoing his young age and relative inexperience when it came to matters of state, Mehmed had also wanted to besiege the Roman capital after the great victory at Varna, a move seen as highly risky by the senior members of the Ottoman government. With Crusader armies roaming the Balkans, many thought such an expensive and risky military campaign would prove ruinous for the state, but the headstrong Mehmed ignored all concerns and objections. The young sultan is reported as saying to his critics, "Either I will conquer Constantinople, or Constantinople shall conquer me." But such a conquest was not meant to be. Alienating his imperial court with his unrelenting demeanor, Mehmed was forced off the throne in favor of his father by a coup d'etat in 1446, orchestrated by his Grand Vizier Jandeli Halil Pasha. He was then exiled to the town of Manisa, where he was to live a life of humiliation, being the first Ottoman Sultan to give up his throne unwillingly without a fight. The whole event would forever alter the relationship between Mehmed and Halil Pasha, as both figures and their followers began a tense rivalry within the court of the recently reinstated Murad II. Even with this internal division at the imperial court, Mehmed continued to serve loyally alongside his father on bloody military campaigns in Albania and at the Second Battle of Kosovo. It was in these years that he saw the struggles and hardships of war for the first time, as the Sultan's personal aide. However, his time alongside his father was to be cut short, as Murad II died of a sudden stroke in 1451, at the age of 46. Although Mehmed had already been hailed as Sultan back in 1444, the succession to the Ottoman throne was still not confirmed, as, according to the state tradition, the role of monarch was eligible to all male members of the House of Osman, regardless of their seniority. The former Sultan had recently sired another son, the 9-month infant Shahzada Ahmed, and unlike Mehmed, he was present at the capital. On top of his potentially dangerous half-brother, Mehmed's already proven danger.
So during the Ottoman interregnum, many Ottoman royal children, most notably Orhan Çelebi, were sent to the Constantinople to escape fratricide. Some, like Demetrius, formerly Yusuf Çelebi, even converted to Christianity. Okay.
His second cousin, Orhan Çelebi, still eyed the Ottoman throne from Constantinople as a Byzantine hostage. The exiled Ottoman prince had previously tried to seize the throne by inciting a civil war during the crisis year of 1444, but was defeated on his march to Edirne. The race to hold the highest office of the land had just begun. Like with the death of Sultan Mehmed I back in 1421, the death of Murad II was also kept a secret by the imperial palace until the issue of succession was determined. Wanting to keep the best interest of the state in mind, and not wanting to give up the throne to an infant or a Byzantine pawn, Jandeli Halil Pasha sent out confidential letters to Manisa informing Mehmed about his father's death, and requesting for him to make his way to the capital at once. In only 3 days, the Ottoman prince and his entourage completed the journey from Manisa to Edirne, crossing the Dardanelles in total secret. Before the wider world knew anything of Murad II's death, Mehmed was crowned Sultan in the courtyard of the imperial palace in front of all to see. 6 years after losing his throne to a coup d'etat, the eldest son of the former Sultan was now back in power.
It just makes sense, isn't it? So far we just have a bit of a reminder what was happening in the previous episodes, because honestly, episodes, because we finished on the fact that Murad II died with having a stroke in age of 46, isn't it? So so that was it, and we're just gonna go now from now on to just see the Mehmed II, how is the second ruling of his gonna work, isn't it? And we'll see. Well, it says the fall of Constantinople, so I'm guessing he's gonna conquer it. So yeah. Okay. Have nothing else to add so far, and the ad is coming up. So let me see you in a moment then. Bye. Alright, I'm back, and let's unmute this one and go back to this one, and everything else seems to be working. So I can go back.
According to traditional Ottoman sources, a tense presentation of ministers took place at the palace the following day, where Mehmed was seated on the imperial throne, receiving statesmen and foreign dignitaries. Although Halil Pasha and his followers ensured the swift ascension of Mehmed II back to power, it was yet to be known if the tensions of the last few years between the Grand Vizier and the Sultan were going to spill over into the next administration. During the presentation, Halil Pasha and his advisors hung at the back of the meeting hall in trepidation, while the 19-year-old Sultan was being greeted.
I was just wondering
Before
how
long,
old was he?
Mehmed noticed the uncalm atmosphere at the back of the hall, and so he proclaimed, "Why do my father's viziers hang back? "Call them forward and tell Halil to take his usual place." The young Sultan then proceeded to insist that Halil Pasha continue his role as Grand Vizier, shocking many in the hall. This act by the Sultan was seen as a political move to unify his inner court in the capital, as it seemed like he had far grander ambitions to attend to. However, before he could attend to such ambitions, the young Sultan had to first attend to his household. One of Mehmed's first actions upon reascending the throne was to legalize the already common practice of fratricide within the House of Osman. Ever since the reign of Sultan Murad I back in the 1360s, the members of the royal family had often resorted to fratricide in order to secure the throne, most famously seen at its zenith during the bloody years of the interregnum. According to the Ottoman state, all royal princes had an equal claim to the throne, and it was only up to divine will and the prince's competency in political and military affairs that would help win them the race to ultimate power. After a prince had secured the throne, it was expected that he would eliminate all threats to his power as a means to ensure the stability of the state from future civil wars, and this included his siblings, or even in more desperate times, his sons. Although it was not a widely popular act in the eyes of the wider public, the practice of fratricide ensured the stability of the state and the continuity of the imperial family for almost an entire century before Mehmed's second reign. After officially codifying the practice of fratricide into law, the young Sultan then ordered the execution of his infant half-brother Shahzada Ahmed. It was from this legal ruling by Mehmed that Ottoman princes, for the next 150 years, would have to endure a life of total competition with their siblings, or face an eventual early death. After securing his seat in power and unifying his imperial court, Mehmed now began preparations to fulfill his childhood ambitions of seizing the Queen of Cities, the Roman imperial capital of Constantinople. By the turn of the 15th century, Constantinople had served as the imperial seat of the Eastern Roman Empire for over a millennium. The city was founded by Emperor Constantine the Great in 324, on top of the former ancient Greek colony of Byzantium. His goal was to create a new lavish capital city for his new Christian empire centered in the east, perhaps in an attempt to close.
Before being named Constantinople in honor of Roman Emperor Constantine the Great, the city was briefly called the New Rome.
Closely monitor the volatile Persian and Danubian fronts of his already overexpanded realm. The new capital also possessed quite advantageous natural defenses against invading armies, as it was situated on a peninsula that could be supplied by a protected deep water harbour in the form of a northern inlet dubbed the Golden Horn. On top of natural defences, during the 5th century, the virtually impregnable three-layered Theodosian walls were constructed, giving the city a further layer of acclaimed invincibility. It was to be these grand walls that repelled and deterred numerous adversaries over the years, such as the Goths, Huns, Avars, Arabs, Slavs, Bulgars, Kievan Rus, and even fellow Roman usurpers.
Well,
At its height during the 5th and 6th centuries, Constantinople's population had topped around 500,000.
that's a big city.
During this era,
even now.
the city was also populated by numerous public buildings, grand squares, imperial palaces, gardens, triumphal arches, and lavish statues from antiquity, topped with an enormous hippodrome. Nevertheless, the crowning jewel of the capital was the Hagia Sophia Church, built during the eventful reign of Emperor Justinian the Great in the 6th century. Ever since its construction, the Church of God's Holy Wisdom had been the world's largest cathedral, thus becoming the centerpiece of Byzantine prestige during the medieval ages and a prime symbol of orthodoxy's triumph against its many foes in the west and east. However, by the time of 1451, Constantinople had long become a shadow of its former self. Back in 1204, the Theodosian walls were breached for the first time by the Latin Knights of the Fourth Crusade, resulting in a destructive sack of the Roman capital. Although the Romans would recapture their imperial seat from Latin occupation in 1261, the richness of Constantinople's infrastructure and population was left in a desolate state. Roman efforts to reconstruct and repopulate their former Queen of Cities were also to prove largely fruitless. The 14th century saw the restored Eastern Romans battling amongst themselves in costly and bloody civil wars, while the Black Death ravaged their urban centers, including the capital itself. Meanwhile, in the background, the sons of Osman established a new state for themselves that saw a further reduction of Byzantine lands in both the Balkans and Anatolia. the significant deterioration of Roman power in the 14th century had seen Constantinople's population dropping well below 50,000. With constant food shortages ravaging the capital, the once powerful emperors of East Rome had now become reliant on the Italian maritime republics of Venice and Genoa for military, political, and economic support. Although Sultan Bayezid I's defeat at the Battle of Ankara had given the Eastern Roman Empire another 50 years of life, very little changed to revert the fortunes of Constantinople. By the reign of John VIII Palaiologos, the situation for Byzantium had become so bad that its rulers forewent the religion of their ancestors in favour of a church union with the papacy. It was believed that by mending the Great Schism of 1054, economic and military assistance from Western Catholic Europe would arrive to the aid of Constantinople and prevent the state from falling to the Ottoman Turks. 2 years before the ascension of Sultan Mehmed II, the Emperor John had died of natural causes at the age of 55, after hearing the disastrous news of Hunyadi's defeat at the Second Battle of Kosovo. The late emperor was succeeded by his younger brother, despot Constantine of Morea, who took up the purple in a simple ceremony at his provincial capital of Mistras. The Byzantine royal had been a much celebrated war hero after his military campaigns in the Morea, Boeotia, and Thessaly, and was seen as an ideal choice in succeeding his late brother's throne. However, it was now he who was reduced to begging for passage to his throne in Constantinople on a Catalan ship. By the time the now proclaimed Constantine XI arrived at the Roman capital, the Byzantine world had been shrunk down to the capital itself and its suburbs, a few islands in the Aegean, and the isolated province of the Morea.
Yeah, so far we're just having the bit of a recap of how was happening and what led to the fall of Constantinople. Because this is only 1453 and the Murad II died in the 1451, so it took Mehmed II 2 years to lead the siege and stuff. So yeah, I'm guessing it took a while before he actually got back to getting the news of his father dying and then sorting out the family matters and things like that. So yeah, and I have a long ad now coming up, so I wanna see you soon. Bye. Alright, I'm back, and while the ad was going, the timer went off. But we're at 18 minutes, so we still have 7 minutes to watch. So let's just watch that and just set another timer for 7 minutes, and then we can stop, and we're gonna continue in 2 weeks. I mean, I'm gonna continue straight away, but you're gonna see the next part in 2 weeks.
Even though it seemed like the world was rapidly closing in on him, the new autocrat of the Romans, unlike his quarrelsome brothers in the Morea, had been resolute in the face of Ottoman aggression. According to Byzantine and Western sources, he was a straightforward and charismatic man who inspired loyalty in the people around him. Constantine was also a skilled administrator who was highly active in the daily tasks of running a state, and above everything else, incredibly loyal and patriotic to his country. However, the 47-year-old had been unlucky in his private life, having been childless since the conclusion of 2 marriages. Although he made repeated attempts to forge new dynastic marriages with foreign powers, all had failed to bear fruit. The surprising death of Sultan Murad II in 1451 was widely celebrated across Western Europe, for he had been seen as a competent Muslim leader who had dealt multiple significant defeats against the forces of Christendom during his reign in power. However, with the ascension of his untested son, many in the halls of the Vatican thought it was now the ideal time to strike against the weakened Turks with another round of crusades. Unfortunately for the papacy, any hopes of another major crusade in the size and scope of the Varna campaign were severely slashed, as many of Aderna's immediate neighbours were exhausted from the bloody wars of the last decade. As a result, many European powers were now eager to secure a steady peace with Mehmed. By the fall of 1451, Venice had renewed peace with the young Sultan, while Hungary, under John Hunyadi, agreed on a 3-year truce in hostilities. In the following months, Genoa, Rhodes, Wallachia, Bosnia, and Trebizond were similarly able to secure guarantees of peace with Aderna, as many believed that the new Sultan was now under the thumb of his peace-orientated Grand Vizier. Lastly, to further secure peace in the Balkans, the young Sultan returned his much-trusted stepmother, Mara Branković, back to her homeland of Serbia, after spending the last 50
Constantine XI proposed marriage to Mara Branković after her former husband Murat II died, but she refused. Okay.
years in the Imperial Ottoman harem. She was now tasked with maintaining the neutrality of her father's realm, while also keeping an eye on Buddha's influence in the country. As a lulling peace settled on the broader region, Ibrahim II Bey of the Karamanid Beylik misread Mehmed's intentions for weakness and started conducting raids into Ottoman territories in western Anatolia during the fall of 1451. Being faced with his first real test since coming back to power, the young Sultan personally led his armies against the forces of Konya in a short but victorious campaign. Once again, Ottoman specialization in gunpowder weapons proved superior to the classic Turkoman usage of unorganized Ghazi warriors and light cavalry. However, the destruction of the Karamanid Beylik was for now to be delayed, as fears of a potential Mamluk military intervention to save their allies in Konya loomed over. As a result, only the border towns of Akshehir and Beyshehir were transferred back to Ottoman authorities during the following peace negotiations. Mehmed's first military campaign had resulted in an overwhelming victory. In addition to conquering his first lands, the young Sultan also took advantage of the sudden war by putting loyal men in positions of power within the ranks of the elite Janissary military corps. A determined Mehmed still remembered the Janissary rebellion that led to his deposition back in 1446, and he also knew that he needed the elite corps on his side for the eventual confrontation against the Byzantines. So, as a result, over 7,000 recruits were added to the ranks of the Kapıkulu, along with dozens of loyal military officers and governors being stationed in high places of power. As the swift Karamanid campaign came to a close, tensions between Edirne and Constantinople had begun to sour. According to traditional Ottoman sources, Constantine XI had sent a series of belligerent letters to the young Sultan, demanding double the annual tribute for Orhan Çelebi, and without such payment, he would be forced to release him from captivity in Constantinople. The Roman Emperor's implication was understood clearly by the Ottoman court. If Mehmed failed to pay the tribute, a fellow claimant to the throne would be at large to instigate a new civil war. While the imperial court at Edirne exploded into mad fury, the young Sultan...
See, this is what I'm talking about. My computer is just not right at all. Too far. I just want to read what was there.
Came to a close, tensions between Edirne and Constantinople had begun to sour. According to traditional Ottoman sources, Constantine XI had sent a series of belligerent letters to the young Sultan, demanding double the annual tribute for Orhan Çelebi, and without such payment...
Okay, so... the Emperor of the Romans does not accept the annual allowance of 300,000 aspers. For Orhan, who is equal to your leader as a descendant of Osman, has now come of age, every day many flock to him. They call him Lord and Leader. He himself does not have the means to be generous to his followers, so he asks the Emperor, who because he lacks funds, cannot satisfy this request. Therefore we ask one of those two things, either double the allowance or we will release Orhan. Come on, it's a way to go about it, I guess. That's not what I'm trying to do. There you go.
He would be forced to release him from captivity in Constantinople. The Roman Emperor's implication was understood clearly by the Ottoman court. If Mehmed failed to pay the tribute, a fellow claimant to the throne would be at large to instigate a new civil war. While the imperial court at Edirne exploded into mad fury, the young Sultan received the hostile letters with a poker face, as he gained a pretext for war against Constantinople. According to him, the red apple that was the Roman capital was now ripe for the taking. By the spring of 1452, the construction of a new waterfront fortress across from the old fortress of Anadolu Hisarı began in earnest. The young Sultan not only wished to blockade the narrowest point on the Bosporus of maritime traffic from the Black Sea, but also to secure a significant crossing hub for his armies in the Balkans and Anatolia, safe from the prying ships of the Italian merchant republics. In only 4.5 months, the construction of the Rumeli Hisarı, or Rumelian Castle, was completed, thus further cutting off the Roman
Although no historical records confirm intentional design, the silhouette of Rumeli Hisari resembles the calligraphy of Mehmed and Muhammad when viewed from the Bosphorus. There's my timer going on. Okay. We are at 23. Okay, let's just watch another 2 minutes.
Capital from the rest of the world. Overnight, vital grain supplies from the Black Sea were cut off from the Roman capital, causing a major panic within the city. To make matters even worse, later that same fall, the fortress first saw action when 3 Venetian ships refused to stop for inspection by local Turkish authorities, resulting in the bombardment and sinking of the fleet's flagship and the demise of its entire crew. The construction of the Rumeli Hisari sent the imperial court in Constantinople into a fury, as the fortress was built on Byzantine territory without the consultation of the emperor. Petitions regarding the legality of the fortress were sent to Edirne, but only the bloodied heads of Roman diplomats were received by the imperial court in return.
Okay.
With a major war seeming to be looming around the corner, Constantine began his correspondence with the Western powers of Europe for military assistance at once. The emperor had been a staunch supporter of the Union of the Churches, implemented back during the Council of Ferrara-Florence, as it was a means to secure Byzantium's military and economic survival with Western assistance. However, with the 3 failed crusades of the 1440s and a loss in general appetite to make war with Edirne, the Eastern Romans were now left with limited options in order to stave off Mehmed's eventual siege of their capital.
Okay.
I'm the CFO of a company with about 3 employees, and I have just one.
There you go. So yeah, so basically I'm gonna finish up here because it's nearly like we're halfway there. And what can I say? So far we just have a recap of what was happening, the historical reasons what happened with the Constantinople, why did it happen, it was in a situation how it was and stuff like that. So I'm guessing in soon they're gonna be the actual siege by Mehmed II, isn't it? So then yeah, so I'm just gonna be finishing up here, and second part we'll see in 2 weeks time. So thank you very much for watching, and I see you tomorrow. Bye.